When the world breaks down, the strongest won't be the ones with the biggest stockpile or the fanciest gear. It'll be the ones who can make something useful from nothing. That truth isn't new. It was written in the ruins of every battlefield, on every frontier, and across every wilderness camp that ever faced scarcity. In times of collapse, supply lines vanish, tools rust, and help doesn't come. But history shows that people who could scavenge, repurpose, and rebuild from scraps not only survived, they thrived. This was the unspoken art of scavenger survival, a forgotten discipline that turned wreckage into weaponry, scraps into shelter, and trash into treasure. And in an age of convenience, it's a skill worth remembering before it's needed again. The roots of scavenger survival lie in war and wilderness. Throughout the Second World War, resource scarcity was a daily reality. Soldiers, partisans, and civilians were forced to become inventors on the fly. Mechanics in the North African desert turned destroyed vehicles into water carriers and makeshift forges. Resistance fighters in occupied Europe used broken farm tools to repair weapons and radios. Downed pilots built fishing hooks from safety pins and signal mirrors from polished canteen lids. Scavenger survival wasn't just about creativity, it was necessity forged under pressure. The skill combined an engineer's eye with a survivor's instinct. To these people, a ruined object wasn't waste. It was raw material. That mindset made the difference between those who adapted and those who didn't. Even before the wars, frontiersmen and pioneers were doing the same. Settlers crossing the American plains carried few tools, often relying on wagon parts, fencing wire, or iron scraps to fashion what they needed. The Great Depression hardened that mindset even further. Farmers who couldn't afford replacements repaired broken machinery with nails, baling wire, and the now legendary Depression ingenuity. This is the same mindset today's survivalists and bushcrafters try to recapture, seeing potential in what others discard. The first rule of scavenger survival is learning to see resources where others see ruin. If you strip survival down to its essence, it's about recognition, seeing not what a thing was, but what it can be. A cracked bottle becomes a knife, a rusted can becomes a cookpot, a car spring becomes a bow. Every broken item has at least two lives if you know where to look. A classic World War II example comes from Pacific Island soldiers who used airplane aluminum to make cutting tools. The metal was lightweight, corrosion-resistant, and easy to sharpen, perfect for jungle use. Similarly, Soviet partisans repurposed German helmet liners into frying pans, while civilians in London collected bomb shrapnel to forge garden tools. These days, you can, apply the same principle just about anywhere. A bit of rebar, for instance, can be hammered into a spearhead, and a section of car seat belt that turns into tough, reliable cordage. Even in the middle of a city, scavenger survival is alive and well. Copper wire, plastic containers, broken electronics, all of these can be stripped down for vital components if you're ever caught in an emergency. The real trick, though, is mental flexibility, understanding that a scrapyard, a burnt-out motor, or even a junk drawer is your new hardware store when the world suddenly stops supplying you. The best scavengers, they know how to prioritize materials based on need and effort. In a survival situation, not all materials are created equal. Metal, glass, wood, and fabric, these are the pillars of scavenger survival. Each one can be reshaped with just a few simple tools, and each can take on more than one role. The real key is knowing which one to grab first, depending on what you're missing. Take metal, for example. It's absolutely irreplaceable for making blades, hooks, and containers that can withstand heat. If you're stranded somewhere, or just sheltering, the first thing you want to find is any bit of sheet metal or wire. Old cans, car parts, fencing, all of that can be transformed with nothing more than a rock and a bit of heat. Back in the Second World War, prisoners of war used bed frames to make saws and stoves. They didn't have workshops, they just had willpower and a lot of repetition. Wood, on the other hand, is your universal fallback. Even broken furniture, old pallets or just branches can be turned into handles, stakes, and the very bones of a shelter. Combine it with salvaged nails or wire, and honestly, you can rebuild almost anything from the ground up. Now, cloth and fabric, they're the unsung heroes. Back in wartime Europe, parachutes became tents, ropes, even clothing. In your situation, old clothes can be turned into bandages, cordage, or even filters. By learning to sort scavenged materials this way, by function, not by form, you start to think the way survivors of history did, and that's no small thing. Every scavenger survivor needs a basic toolkit, built, not bought. While the goal is to make tools from scraps, you still need a way to start. The beauty of scavenger survival is that your first tool can create the next. A piece of broken glass becomes a knife, which carves a handle, which sharpens another blade, and so on. Let's say you're in a post-storm situation or an abandoned area. Start by finding anything metallic. A fragment of a tin can be folded or bent to form a crude cutting edge. Heat it in a small fire to temper it, if possible. Next, find something wooden for leverage, a stick, chair leg, or plank. Bind the metal shard to it using strips of cloth, vine, or wire. That gives you your first tool, a cutting implement. From there, expand. Use your new knife to shape hooks from wire, dig with a metal sheet, or puncture holes in containers for cooking. Every tool expands your capability. This is how old-time survivors thought. One tool built the next. It's not about perfection. It's about function. Even crude tools, when made with intent, can perform the same job as store-bought ones. Scavenger survival is about resilience, not aesthetics. Modern survival culture often glorifies gear, but the scavenger knows that real preparedness doesn't live in a backpack. It lives in your head. The ability to build from wreckage, to repair, and to adapt means you'll never be fully helpless. This philosophy was common among war refugees, nomads, and explorers. They carried knowledge, not cargo. A person who can purify water, light a fire, and forge a tool from debris is less vulnerable than someone with $1,000 kit they don't know how to repair. So train your mind to look at everything as potential. The next time you walk past an old appliance, a pile of scrap, or a junk car, study it. Ask yourself, what can this do for me if things go bad? That's how history's greatest survivors thought. The world today is more fragile than it appears. Supply chains can vanish overnight, technology can fail, and dependence on ready-made convenience leaves most people exposed. But the lessons of the scavenger, those learned in war zones, wilderness camps, and collapsed economies, can still be learned by anyone willing to get their hands dirty. Start small, build something from discarded parts, mend a broken handle, forge a simple tool, relearn what your grandparents or great-grandparents knew instinctively, how to make do. Because when scarcity returns, it won't be your gadgets that save you. It'll be your skill to build from nothing. If you value real survival knowledge rooted in history and practicality, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom. Share this with someone who respects old-world resilience. The forgotten art of scavenger survival isn't just a story. It's the bridge between our past and our ability to endure the future.